Okay, in this short video, what I want to do is walk through the process of finalizing the project itself, taking the coordinate system that we established early on, setting that as my project coordinate system, and then creating what we call point feature classes or layers out of that sanitized EC and yield data sets. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up ArcMap, and if you forgot how to establish the coordinate system, we'll go through that one more time here. So I have ArcMap running, and in this case, I'm going to run two instances of ArcMap so that we can go through the steps of getting the coordinate system once again. So here's the other session of ArcMap running. Again, this is just going to be a temporary session, so I can minimize this. I'm just going to go find that state plane coordinate system data set, and bring that back over here. And we're going to work with the Pullman area first, so I know that it's up here in this vicinity. Again, if I know exactly where it's at, I can just click on the polygon that represents Pullman, Washington, and I can see it's a Washington South zone for the state plane NAD 83 data. Again, if I don't recall, I'm not sure quite where that stuff's at, I can use the geocoding toolbar to type in a zip code or a city or state and find that information out. So here's that toolbar again. Use the World Geocoding Service and just simply type in an address or a zip code or something like that that will help establish. And we can see, yep, I can right click and hit flash. You can see that that's definitely showing up there in that region there. So I know I'm working with the Washington South zone. So I know that to be true, so now I can set up my project. So I'll go back here to a blank project, and the first thing I want to do is right click on my data frame. So this is called a data frame, this layers. I right click on it and go down to properties. And I'm going to set up my my coordinate system, and you can create favorites here so that you can work with this frequently. And so you can see I have one in here. Let's establish another favorite. So I'm going to go to projected coordinate systems, state plane, and then I'm going to pick on the NAD 83 feet. And I'm going to scroll down until I find that Washington South. That's what I'm working with. Whoops, I'm sorry, not international feet. What we want to click on is the NAD 83 2011 US feet datum here. So we'll click on that, and I'm going to scroll down until I find my Washington South. So there's Washington South. The FIPS code is 4602, so we'll pick that. And I think I can just right click and say add to favorites. So now it's always going to be up there in my favorites, and as I get things that I'm working with often, you might want to add your favorites up here, because you'll be importing data in several times here. So we've got that established. I got my coordinate system established for my data frame, and I hit OK. So now if I right click on my data frame again, go to properties, and look at general and look at my coordinate system, I should make sure that that's in the coordinate system that I want to work in. Okay. Now, one other thing I could do is I could add in a base map. And a couple ways of doing this. I can click on this drop-down box and hit add base map. Now, if these options are grayed out, that means you don't have an internet connection and you have to connect to the internet. But I can just hit add base map, and I'm going to bring in the aerial photography for my map. And I don't need this other one open up back here, so I'm going to go ahead and close this ArcMap session and not save that. And so there are lots of options here for base maps. I'm going to go ahead and just bring in my imagery. I could bring in imagery with labels if I want to see road and things like that, but in this case I'm not going to worry about that. So it's going to bring in the imagery. Now what's happening here is the base map, the imagery service, is coming from online, and it's in a different projection than what my data frame is, which is why you kind of see it in a different shape here, because I've set my data frame to Washington South coordinate system, but my base layer is coming in from a different coordinate system, so it's projecting on the fly, which is good. So I'm going to zoom in here to the northwest area because that's where I'm going to be working in. And in fact, let's just go ahead and zoom into Pullman, Washington once it gets up here. Okay, so I'm just going to leave at that view right now. And a couple things I want to do here. So I've got my data frame set up for my projection. I've loaded in my area photography. The next thing I want to do is come over to my catalog, and I want to establish my default data repository for this project here. So I go to my folder connections, and I go to my WSU golf course folder, and remember that data set we created earlier. I'm going to right click on that data set, that file geodatabase, and say make default geodatabase. So anything I do from now on, this is now established with this project, and now I have to save this project because right now it's untitled. It's an unsaved project. So I've set my data frame coordinate system. I set up my default geodatabase to work in. I've loaded up my base map, and now I need to save this project. So we'll hit the save button, and I'm going to go to my farms WSU folder golf course and just save it right to the root there, and I'm just going to call it map. This is my map project. So the next time I come into ArcMap, I can open up that map document, and my data frame coordinate system will already be set up. My default geodatabase will already be set up. My area photography will be set up and ready to go. All right, so now we're ready to convert that sanitized data. So back in our catalog, I'm going to, now you can see I've got my map document, I got my geodatabase established, and then my raw files here. There's my sanitized EC data. I'm just going to right click on that and say create feature class from XY table. Okay. Dialog box pops up. It automatically finds my longitude and latitude field. And the things that I want to change here are first off the coordinate system, because the raw data is still coming in a non-projected decimal degree format. So I need to establish to say, hey, that's what it's coming in as, and then I'm going to put it into my state plane coordinate system. All right, so we got the data coming in as geographic. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up here for a second. So back up for a second here. Let's don't go this route here. I'm gonna hit cancel. I apologize for that. I want to take a different route here, and I'll explain why I'm doing this later. But let me kind of just recap again what's happening. So we've got our project saved. We've got our data frame coordinate system set up for Washington South. We have our geodatabase established for this project, and we saved our project. So I want to bring in that sanitized data. So I'm going to go this route, and you'll find that there's lots of different ways of bringing data into the system. And so we're going to go File. I'm going to say Add Data, and I want to add XY data. So I'm going to go out to my folder structure. Right, there's my folder connections. Navigate down to my WSU raw files and find my sanitized data, and it automatically picks up my X and Y field because I've named them longitude and latitude, and it kind of shows a couple things here. By default, it's trying to automatically apply the projection and the coordinate system of my data frame, but that's wrong for this sanitized data. This sanitized data is coming in as decimal degree non-projected data. So I need to fix this first before I hit finish, and it's very important or else your data will come in a different location. So I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to go to geographic coordinate systems, world, and I'm going to pick WGS84. Now I'm also going to right click and say add to favorites so that it's always up here up top too, so I can start adding in the favorites of my projections that I use. And so I'll hit OK. Now you'll see, now it's simply saying that this data that's coming in, use the decimal degrees stored in these two columns and bring it in as WGS84. And we're good. So we'll hit OK. Now it gives us a dialog box here that says this table you specified does not have an object ID field, so we'll not be able to do certain things with it, which is fine. We just want to get into the system, and then I'm going to export it out into the data set. So now you can see it's pretty quick. I hit OK, and there it is in my table of contents. And we can see some dots here on the map. I'm going to use the zoom in button. I'm going to drag a box around that area. I'm going to zoom in to the golf course down here. Let's get a little bit closer, and there we go. We see it now being displayed on the golf course. Okay, so at this point, what this is called is an event layer. So you can see it added here, this little text here called events. So this is just an event layer. It's not really a data set inside of the environment yet. It's just a representation of that sanitized file. So I have to convert it. So what I'm going to do is right click on this layer and hit Data, Export Data. And I'm going to export all the features, but I'm going to export it as the data frame coordinate system. That means it's going to pick up that Washington South coordinate system, state plane coordinate system, and put it in that projection. And I want to put it in to my file geodatabase for the WSU golf course. So we'll go on the golf course, we'll open up this data file geodatabase, and I got to give it a name. So now this is important to give it a good name. So we know this is the EC data for hole 17. Okay, and that's about all you want to do. You don't want to go kind of crazy with these names again. If it's pivot 9 EC or however you want to do it, but I'll for my demos and my instruction here, I always prefix something with like EC or yield, and then I'll give it either a pivot or a hole or a farm, and then I'll give it a number. That's what I'll kind of do, and I'll leave it underscored. Don't try to use spaces. Again, that kind of mucks things up. So we'll hit save, review all features in the data frame coordinate system, and we're going to put it in that file geodatabase and hit OK. And it says, do you want to add the exported data to the map? Yes. So now there is my real data set. This is just the event. So at this point, I can just right click and say remove, and all is good. And now I hit save again, and my project is saved. I have my EC data loaded as a file, as a point feature class. Now to validate that, if I go back over here to catalog and open up my data, now you'll see I have a point feature class, EC hole 17, that was created from the sanitized data. Okay, at this point I'm going to pause, and the next video I'm going to show you how to start rendering and displaying the symbology for that. Now, the same process that I did this EC data, I could do with the LDS ERDA. I would just have to start a new project, establish its coordinate system, and just do the same steps that I did for the golf course.